An elderly leftover woman who is ignored, and a kind-hearted old white rabbit who is harmless to humans and animals vs a cold-blooded immortal with an unnamed and indifferent appearance who observes the impermanence of the world with cold eyes. His appearance is against the heavens and his tongue is sharp as both low-level commoners. They have no family or sect, but with a combination of men and women, they can eliminate demons without getting tired. Look at the strongest immortal master in the world, how to induce waste to become talented step by step. Hualing, in the previous life, you took me out of the mud and led me to the highest and unattainable temple in the world. You raised me to become an immortal with the gentleness that crushed the three realms, but in the end, you left me alone to guard the throne and miss you. In this life, if I were to save you from the mud, I would return everything that originally belonged to you. Keywords of the novel. No pop-up window for Flower and Moon Chronicles. Download the complete text of Flower and Moon Chronicles, and read the latest chapters of Flower and Moon Chronicles. Chapter 1. Old Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Old Girl. Jinghua, the capital of Jingcheng. On March 3, the weather is new, and there are many beautiful people by the Luoshui River. On the day of the release of the list, on both sides of the river, the winding water flows with wine cups, which is the time of the intersection of elegance and elegance. A beautiful woman and a talented person walk by the riverbank. If they look at each other, they fold willow branches and give them as gifts. Then they go home to inform their parents and invite a matchmaker to be hired. This is considered a happy occasion. However, Tao Yuer waited eagerly for 10 years, but did not receive a willow branch. The sun is setting in the west, and the heartbroken person is under the willow tree. After much of the commotion, the crowd gradually dispersed, leaving only a milky white figure. The color obtained from washing peach-pink clothes countless times. It is in a state of disrepair. Also, isn't anyone interested in me? Tao Yuer stood by the river, watching the last limping man pass by without looking askance, and finally determined. Well, no one was interested in her. This is already Tao Yuer's 10th year participating in the March Flower Festival. For the past 10 years, her grandparents have been infuriated by her and have closed their eyes. Before leaving, they even instructed her, as a woman, the most important thing is to find a good family to marry. You should keep a low profile, follow strict rules, and never deviate from the norm, making people laugh. Tao Yuer has been a timid person since she was young, with no independent opinions and obedient to her elders. Her grandparents instill in her day and night the same set of 3 obediences and 4 virtues. She is obedient and comes here every year to attend meetings. Never a year has passed. Watching the sisters in the same industry getting married and having children one by one, but 10 years later, she was still single. They all say, you were born lucky and missed your best age. No good family dares to take it. Not only good families, but even less good families don't look up to her. She is a well-known celestial ghost and solitary star from afar. Born, he killed his mother, and within a month, his father also passed away in an unknown fire. Now that her grandparents have also left, she has truly achieved being alone and carefree. She actually doesn't need to attend a March meeting again, but as a woman from a poor family and without skills, she doesn't know what else she can do now. When she was a child, she had extremely great dreams and aspirations. She once heard from the storyteller that on the other side of the sea, in the state of Yong in Qingkangzhou, the queen was revered, and the daughters there did not need to marry and have children. They had equal rights like men. She fantasized that one day she would be able to sail far across the sea and go to the state of Yong, living a life that would not be laughed at by others. But this idea was stifled in the cradle at the age of 5. She didn't even have the money to go to Yen country, let alone cross the sea. So she turned her gaze back to Jizhou. She once heard that there were 9 academic masters in the capital city of neighboring country Yen, all of whom were daughters with outstanding literary talent and fame throughout the world. They lived a carefree life due to their literary talent, remained unmarried and devoted their entire lives to serving the literati. There is also Yen Gua, a master of weapon forging who is also a woman. She has 300 men under her command for her to dispatch and freely call for peace. All these things are strange stories in the ears of ordinary people, but when she hears them, she thinks that's the life she wants. The world is so big, there are many things she can do, but her family only allows her to get married. At the age of 15, my grandparents fell seriously ill. They didn't want to treat her illness, instead they sold all their family assets, dressed and combed her hair, worked as matchmakers, and hoped to be liked by people at the March meeting and marry her back home. On the one hand, it resolved Tao Yuer's lifelong affairs, and on the other hand, it also gave her a generous dowry, reducing the burden on her family. But for 10 years in a row, no one cared about her. 10 years have passed, and all those childhood illusions have been forgotten, leaving only the year after year of ignored setbacks etched in her heart. She is 25 years old now, and if she misses this year, she won't be able to remarry. The sisters of the same industry were already preparing their daughters' clothes for March 3rd. Tao Yuer, give up. You look like a thin monkey, and you can't have a son. The old woman who sells tea egg by the river holds her grandson in her arms and waves to Tao Yuer, saying this for the 10th time. In the past decade, the old lady has seen many women who have not been favored by others, but there has never been anyone as persistent as Tao Yuer. She was so persistent that even her great-grandson knew Tao Yuer's name. When she saw Tao Yuer, she opened her mouth and said, "Are you tired? Don't be sad. My grandmother said that when she can't move, she will give you this position. You can sell tea egg. You can sell tea egg all your life." Tao Yuer was struck by lightning, and the pain of being called Onai even exceeded the pain of losing the election. When she first participated in the March Flower Fair, the grandson of the old lady who sold tea egg came to her waist and said to herself in a childish voice, "Aunt Tao, you can do it next year." She used to think that she could definitely get married next time. But after 10 March flower festivals, from the moment she was called Grandma by her grandmother's great-grandson, she really began to have deep doubts about herself. Tao Yuer clenched her fists tightly, then let go, and then clenched again. She turned her head and glanced reluctantly at the place that carried all her youth. Finally, she took a deep breath, released her fist, and strode away. Jingqing Bridge, Tao Yuer, 25 consecutive blind dates, don't look to the east, ignore the west, and have a shy face without achieving anything. Old lady, it's really useless. No one cares about the Luoshui River. A group of children clapped and sang around Tao Yuer. This has been singing for many years, and every year it becomes the first line. She sang from the age of 18 to the age of 25, and her ears were so calloused when she heard it. But I am also used to it. But today, she is particularly tragic. Tao Yuer lives in the outskirts of the city, which is quite a distance from the Luoshui River. After leaving Chongwen Gate and walking south for 2 hours, it was her residence. A muddy thatched cottage. This is all the property left to her by her grandparents. But it seems that it is no longer habitable. The spring rain lasted for 17 or 18 days in a row, and the soil on the house had already been washed away. When the wind blew, even the thatched grass above the head was blown away. In the storm, household items scattered all over the place, and a group of people threw them around. Tao Yuer picked up one and then another, and a 25-year-old girl was bullied by several children. When they all dispersed, she realized that half of her most cherished book had been lost. That is her first and only book in her life. That book has no cover, no author's name, and even she can't read, but when she found it, it was hers. It's okay if you don't understand, it's at least a book. That is the only gift in her dimly lit life. Representing the distant places she cannot go. Now half of the book has been torn off, and the remaining half is nowhere to be found. It must have been taken by those children. Tao Yuer was furious and finally mustered the courage to knock on her neighbor's door. After a while, the other party slowly opened the door. Manager Zhao, who was wide and fat, stood in front of the door with his hands around him. He had a contemptuous smile on his lips and a pair of eyes staring straight at Tao Yuer, saying, "What do you want?" Tao Yuer was already thin and weak, and only came here with a burst of anger, but when he glared at her like this, her momentum weakened significantly. At this moment, all her anger dissipated and she blushed, saying, "Zhao, the shopkeeper. I just wanted to ask, did your grandson take my daughter's book?" "Little girl. Son. At your age, are you still willing to call yourself a little girl? I wouldn't even think there's a problem with calling you Lao Shen. Zhao shopkeeper sneered, "You don't pee and look in the mirror, how annoying is your poor appearance. Are you still taking your book? My toilet paper is even more valuable than your book. Get lost. Otherwise, I'll teach you how to eat and walk." Zhao shopkeeper raised his fist, pretending to teach her a lesson. "Calm down." Manager Zhao's calmness. Tao Yuer instinctively crouched down with her head hugged, trembling in the corner of the wall. Zhao, the shopkeeper, saw her appearance and had no desire to hit her. He sneered twice before slamming the door shut. Out of sight is purity. The expected fist did not fall for a long time, and Tao Yuer was startled to hear the sound of the door closing before lifting her head. After this shock, she completely forgot why she had come this time. She straightened up and patted her chest when she saw that the other party had already returned to the room, grateful that the shopkeeper Zhao had not hit her. "He is still a good person after all." New article opens up a pit, good luck. I hope new and old friends can support me a lot. February 25, 2023 retention, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Hanging in a picturesque place. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Hanging in a picturesque place. As night fell and the sky was completely dark, Tao Yuer walked aimlessly on the street. The tavern on the roadside is filled with people's eloquent and passionate voices, indicating the meaning of the country, as if everything is in their hands. Every year on the third day of the third lunar month, everyone else is on the top of the golden list, feeling proud. Lang Jun looks after each other, 3 media and 6 pings, holding hands in pairs, reaching the pinnacle of life. Even those students who fail the imperial examination can be favored by some women with better family backgrounds, possessing the beauty of sitting opposite each other and cuddling together after getting married. But for the past 10 years, her fate has only been filled with sorrow and sorrow. Pushing cups and changing dishes, it seemed as if the dogs of others could afford meat, but she didn't even have the money to eat a bun in her pocket. This world is really dying from drought and waterlogging. Tao Yuer looked up at the sky and found that the world was vast, yet nowhere was home. Moon. Is it Tao Yuer? Suddenly, there were 2 calls from behind, 1 male and 1 female. The familiar sound made Tao Yuer's whole body stiff. After a long period of days, Tao Yuer still turned her head. There are 2 soft sedans not far behind, with a man and a woman standing beside them. The man is tall and handsome, charming, holding a girl. The woman was dressed in splendid attire, covered in gold and jade, and holding a baby in her arms. You can tell at a glance that they are an enviable couple. It's Chilbi and Guantang. Good, long time no see. Tao Yuer frowned and tried hard to squeeze out a smiling face, but it was even uglier than crying. It's really Yuer. I feel like it from a long distance, but I didn't expect it to be really. Chilbi's face moved and her eyes turned red. Lu Guantang immediately took out a handkerchief and wiped the corners of her eyes. Then he helped her walk towards Tao Yuer. As the 2 approached, Tao Yuer's body gradually straightened and she began to feel lost. Her hands were backed behind her, even trembling slightly. Her inner peace is far from the surface. Yuer, are you okay? Chilbi hesitated and remembered that it was March 3rd today. Seeing her again, she guessed that she probably had no one interested. Her reputation as an old girl has spread throughout Jingqing, and of course, it has also reached the ears of these childhood playmates. Tao Yuer raised the corner of her mouth, nodded like pounding garlic, and said, "I'm fine, and you guys?" Lu Guantang held Qinqiubi's shoulders and remained silent. Qinqiubi frowned and said softly, "Inger has just turned 1 year old, and we are considered to have both children. We have watched the clouds open and the moon shines." Qinqiubi and Lu Guantang are both the children of Tao Yuer, and the three of them have a childhood neighbor relationship. Qinqiubi, like her, was poor and destitute, without any stunning and unparalleled appearance, and had been separated for a long time. After the imperial examination, Lu Guantang lost news and there has been no news for 10 years. She kept thinking, did her childhood friends also struggle like her? She was worried about them a lot, but now it seems that she was overthinking. She is the only one struggling hard. That's great, congratulations to you all. Tao Yuer rubbed her hands and took out half a day from her pocket, awkwardly saying, "Look at me. I didn't bring any money when I went out, and I wanted to give my child a gift for the meeting. Now." Lu Guantang couldn't bear it, hesitating to speak, with a look of wanting to speak but not knowing where to start. Qinqiubi, on the other hand, was much more dignified and enthusiastic. She walked up directly and took her hand with heartache, interrupting her. "Yuer, why are you being polite with us? Are you so thin? Why don't you eat? Why don't you go over to the mansion for a chat?" Tao Yuer waved her hands repeatedly and shook her head, saying, "I've eaten it. I have something else to do, and I'm leaving Jingqing tonight." "Well. Then we'll meet again when you come back. My family lives in Yongfang, and when you go everywhere and ask someone, you'll know the name of the crown court." Qinqiubi said, taking out 2 ingots of silver from her pocket and stuffing them into Tao Yuer's hand, asking her to accept whatever she said. "I can't accept your money, I'm not short of money." Tao Yuer repeatedly refused, but Lu Guantang also came forward and directly put the money in her hand, saying, "What are you being polite to us for? This is what you deserve." "Is that so?" "Yes, she deserves it." Tao Yuer looked at her childhood friend's half-pursed lips and furrowed eyebrows, knowing that if she didn't accept their money today, they wouldn't be better off. In order to make others feel better, just take the money yourself and give it up. Self-respect or something. I've been rolling in the soil a few times before, and stepping on a few more feet won't hurt. "Thank you very much." Tao Yuer finished speaking and lowered her head to look at her toes. "See you another day, then." "Okay." Tao Yuer nodded, tears swirling in her eyes. She never looked up at the two of them. When they got into the sedan chair and walked away, she lifted her head and watched the 2 sedan chairs gradually drift away, eventually disappearing at the street corner. Tao Yuer looked at the silver in her hand, clenched and let go, wanting to throw it away several times but reluctant to let go. She walked and saw a beggar on the roadside, so she casually sent him out. The beggar was grateful behind her, but her heart was completely cold. She had heard that Qinqiubi had already married and had children, but she didn't expect her husband to be Lu Guantang. Lu Guantang was once her best friend and only friend. She stole wild vegetables and fruits from all over to sell, and once she made money, she bought him books to read. He once said that if no one married her after the age of 15, he would reluctantly marry her back home. As long as he takes a bite of food, there will be her portion. So she worked even harder to dig wild vegetables. Later. As expected, Lu Guantang passed the imperial examination and became an official in another prefecture. He was transferred back to the capital and had a promising future, rising step by step. Judging from their daughter's age, I'm afraid she was born when she was 15 years old. But when was Qinqiubi with Lu Guantang? I dug my own wild vegetables, but it's really boring. On the contrary, she missed the best age for choosing a spouse in vain and dragged herself into becoming a big girl. Tao Yuer rubbed her hands, feeling empty in her heart, but she didn't seem to have any stance or anger. Lu Guantang has never said he loves her. Whether it's waiting or digging wild vegetables, it's all voluntary for her. She didn't even need any verbal agreement from him, so she happily did everything. I placed myself in the position of Lu Guantang's wife and did everything that was good to him. Later, Lu Guantang disappeared, and she didn't wait for him either. But instead, I listened to my grandparents and attended the March Flower Festival. Her current bleakness precisely indicates that Lu Guantang's choice was not wrong. Not only does he look down on her. No one in Quanjing City looks up to her. Realizing this, Tao Yuer realized that she didn't even have the right to blame them. She was cowardly and indecisive, so when Lu Guantang asked her to wait, she waited. Lu Guantang disappeared, and her grandparents asked her to go on a blind date, so she went on a blind date. She can't blame them. It's not at all strange. On the contrary, sincere blessings. They all came out of a slum, and she should be happy if they can tie the knot. Tao Yuer took a sniff and remembered her life as a laughing stock. She felt like a complete waste, even living was a waste of air. Why not find a place with clear mountains and clear waters? Hang yourself. The E mansion is also a mansion. There shouldn't be any more house leaks and rainy nights. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Is dead. I won't live anymore. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 is dead. I won't live anymore. Tao Yuer walked aimlessly forward and finally arrived at Fahua Temple at dawn. Fahua Temple is built on the top of Mangshan Mountain, and the peach blossom forest on the top is in full bloom with a fragrant aroma. Looking down from the mountain, you can see a vast blue lake, dotted with sparks, and it is a night fishing boat. In terms of scenery, it is the land that Tao Yuer yearns for, with beautiful mountains and clear waters, and the fragrance of birds and flowers. Looking around, Tao Yuer finally fell in love with a peach tree with a crooked neck, not for anything else but because it looked easier to climb. Tao Yuer untied her belt, climbed up the tree trunk, tied a knot on her belt, and threw it onto the branch. Then she reached her head in, closed her eyes, and jumped down. The weight of her whole body was borne by a thick cloth strap, and Tao Yuer's neck was tightly held. She kicked her legs randomly, her eyes protruding, and her tongue sticking out. Not only does it lack the elegance imagined, but its shape is also comical and eerie. The feeling of suffocation came faster than she had imagined, and she found that she still couldn't be calm in this final life. Her mind flashed with the bits and pieces of these years, recalling the days when she was a child in Pinkangli, sitting with Chin Chobi in Lu Guantang and planting spring flowers. At that time, although they couldn't eat enough food or drink hot soup, their happiness was so simple. Where did they have the secular vision that came later? She remembers very clearly that 20 years ago, under the jujube tree in front of her house, she confidently told Chin Chobi and Lu Guantang, "We must leave here. Only by leaving here can life have hope. We will definitely live the best life, with meat for every meal." When she was a child, she always comforted and encouraged the people around her, giving infinite hope to Chin Chobi and Lu Guantang. But she didn't expect that she was the one who gave up her life first. Tao Yuer's eyes turned white as tears slid from the corners of her eyes. From now on, she might not be able to close them anymore. It's really ugly. She couldn't even look good when she died suddenly. Tao Yuer felt her neck loosen, and then her body, along with the tree trunk, smashed into the grass. With a loud bang, the trunk of the tree fell to the ground, creating a rolling smoke and dust. However, she did not feel any pain, she only felt difficulty breathing. The sudden relaxation made her cough incessantly, and a large amount of air rushed into her chest and lungs, making it difficult for Tao Yuer to suppress her breathing. "Did you not die yourself?" "Yes. Not dead yet." Tao Yuer's eyes were red, and as she looked around, she noticed that the broken branches of the tree trunk were neatly arranged, not at all like they were broken due to inability to bear her weight, but rather as if they had been cut off by an axe. Who's causing trouble? Tao Yuer stood up unsteadily and looked around. People nowadays are not at all free-spirited. If they can't take it easy, they will threaten their fate. Do you think that if you die, the other person will feel sad? A sneer came from behind, and Tao Yuer hurriedly turned back to see a white figure leaning on a nearby tree trunk under the moonlight. The shade of the trees obscured the moonlight, and Tao Yuer could only vaguely see his dark long hair and fair-side face. Under his long hair, his lips were thin and crimson. Tao Yuer looked at him and also noticed that there were no sharp tools like axes around the person. How did the trunk of the tree break? What's the taste of death? The person raised the corner of their mouth and sneered again. Why don't you try it yourself and find out? Tao Yuer's eyes turned red as she looked at him, filled with caution. The person shook his head gently and said, I don't want to die yet. Then don't interfere with me, Tao Yuer said, taking off her belt from the trunk and preparing to find another tree to hang again. She was cowardly all her life, and when she died, she no longer had to bow down to others. I don't want to talk to him at all. But before she could take a few steps, she heard the person say, Isn't it too unworthy to search for life and death for a man? Tao Yuer stopped and coldly replied, What do you understand? Listening to your voice, I'm afraid you're still a little kid. What qualifications do you have to judge the lives of others? Ha! The person let out an almost imperceptible mockery and said mysteriously, Isn't it? Now all you think about in your mind is the shadow of that man. Man, it's Lu Guantang, right? Yes, when it comes to men, the only sound, face, and smile that comes to mind is him. But so what? I'm dying, can't I think about it? Tao Yuer thought about him for most of her life, and finally waited for his appearance, but he was already the husband of her good friend. Now that I am on the brink of death, even if I still think about it, I am afraid it will be the last time I think about it. She has no one else to think about in her life. Are you determined to seek death? The person asked again. Yes, Tao Yuer nodded and answered decisively, without any hesitation. He let out a long sigh and said slowly, The today you easily gave up is the tomorrow that the deceased has long dreamed of. Life comes and goes, and every day is an irreplaceable life. Do you really plan to give up on this? Tao Yuer remained silent for a moment, but still said indifferently, I won't live anymore. I won't live anymore. Then. You go die, the person said, turning around and leaving without looking back. The surroundings returned to a deathly silence. Tao Yuer felt a momentary loss. In fact, although she has a tough mouth, she still hopes to have someone to talk to more with her. Perhaps with just a few more words, she won't want to die that much anymore. But she couldn't see through her own heart, and that person was even more indifferent than she thought. Tao Yuer found another crooked-necked peach tree and hung herself up again. Pop! This time the branch broke faster than last time, and her body felt almost no pain except for the pain in her buttocks when she fell to the ground. She searched for more than 10 peach trees in a row with great hatred, but all the branches were completely broken without exception. When she hung up the 17th tree, she still had her buttocks falling to the ground without exception. This time it wasn't a broken trunk, it was a broken belt. Tao Yuer looked down at the rope in her hand and sneered bitterly, I can't even die. I'm really useless, and everything I do is bumpy. Tao Yuer threw the rope and walked to the edge of the cliff, intending to end her life in a simpler and more decisive way. Jumping off the cliff. At this moment, the sky was not yet bright, except for a faint white light rising in the east. Looking down from the cliff top, one could only see a hazy area that could not be seen at all. Jump down from here, I'm afraid the bones are gone. If she had known there was such a cliff here, why would she have been tinkering around for most of the night? Tao Yuer took a sniff, almost to the point of tears of satisfaction for her own wisdom. She tiptoed up, spread out her hands, and leaped forward. Pop 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 pop, 3 times in a row, she landed on the trunks of 3 trees, and finally, with a loud bang, she landed on the grass. This time it was on the ground with a face on. It's already dawn, yet you haven't died yet. A familiar and indifferent male voice came from above, like a dream. Although it was a mocking tone, it sounded like Sanskrit from the Buddhist realm with a lazy smile due to its crisp throwing on the ground. Tao Yuer opened her eyes and saw a pair of thin black men's boots with shallow dirt on them. She lifted her head with difficulty and saw the man holding a bunch of branches in his arms last night, staring at her in amazement. Tao Yuer also stared at him in confusion. When I sat up again and looked towards the top of the cliff, I realized that the hill covered by black clouds was only about 2 zhang high, and I was obstructed by 3 big trees. When I fell to the ground, I only suffered some skin injuries. Why? What is this all about? Tao Yuer scratched her hands and shook her head vigorously. Life is already difficult, but death is even harder than life. Oh my goodness, are you playing with me? The man sighed leisurely and asked her, do you really want to die so much? Otherwise. Is my determination not firm enough? Tao Yuer pounded her chest and feet, tossing and turning all night, her words becoming weak and powerless. Follow me, I'll take you to death. The man gathered the branches together and in the next moment, the 5 fingers of his right hand spread out in front of Tao Yuer. These are a pair of very nice hands. The nail covers are well trimmed, exposing the fingertips slightly, and the knuckles are fair and slender. With these hands, most women would feel inferior when they saw them. Tao Yuer carefully looked at him and compared her own, only feeling that her own could not be called a hand at all. Its claws. Tao Yuer stared blankly at the hand he was reaching out to her, and by some strange coincidence, she put her hand on it. His hands were warm and cold, and his knuckles protruded without hurting anyone. After pulling Tao Yuer up, he turned around and walked ahead to lead the way. Tao Yuer followed behind him, looking at his tall and upright figure, realizing that she still hadn't seen what he looked like. Such a person who appears in the wilderness in the middle of the night. Can't be a monster, right? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Hualing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Hualing. At the hour of Mao, the east gradually turns white, and the sky shines brightly. Tao Yuer followed the unfamiliar man through the desolate smoke and grass, shallow shoals and wild islands, and finally arrived at a dilapidated wooden door. This is a single opening wooden door, with uneven surfaces, mottled grooves, and grooves filled with soil. The walls on both sides of the door are stacked with stones, covered in mud, and the wind rustles down with soil. Tao Yuer has traveled to the outskirts of the city many times, and it is the first time she has seen such a dilapidated house. From the outside, it looks even worse than the slums of her hometown. Where is this? Tao Yuer couldn't help but ask. My home. Why did you bring me to your house? Tao Yuer wondered. Don't you want to die? The man slowly tilted his head and asked her indifferently. Tao Yuer only realized that his profile was very beautiful. The nose bridge is high and straight, the corners of the eyes are narrow and slightly raised, and the corners of the mouth always carry a cold and seemingly absent smile. The solitary and isolated temperament is out of place with the surrounding buildings. Surprisingly, he was a young man with a jade face and a silk scarf. It may seem like he's only 17 or 18 years old, but his calm and composed demeanor is even more composed than himself, who is 20.5 years old. People are really more popular than people. He not only has a better voice than her, but also a more beautiful appearance. His figure, steps, and temperament are all crushed in all aspects. As a woman, she is nothing compared to a man. It's really a failure. As Tao Yuer was defeated, Hualing said again, everyone who comes here will not walk out alive. Do you really want to come in? After the man finished speaking, without waiting for Tao Yuer to answer, he pushed open the door and walked in. I didn't even give her half the time to stay and wait. Dust was flying under the door, falling all over Tao Yuer's body. She coughed several times and was choked to the point where she could hardly open her eyes. However, her feet remained firm and resolute as she followed the young man into the courtyard. She had long wanted to die, and if she could die, it would be considered a merit. The yard was even more dilapidated than she had imagined. Surrounded by a circle of adobe houses, one adjacent to the other, asymmetrical in size. There is a big tree in the center of the yard, under which there is a table that can accommodate more than 30 people, and more than 20 chairs with missing arms and legs are surrounded in all directions. The young man walked ahead, picked up the chair that had fallen to the ground, and then carried the firewood to the backyard. It's hard for Tao Yuer to imagine a young man in white living in such a place. She looked up and didn't see anyone else, so she could only follow the boy step by step. The two of them arrived at the woodshed. In the corner of the firewood room lay 2 large black pots, and on the cutting board next to the pot were colorful pastries of all sizes, all freshly made dough. "Can you make a fire?" The young man crouched in front of the stove, pointing to a nearby pot and asked Tao Yuer. "Yes." Tao Yuer nodded, squatting on the ground holding firewood and skillfully manipulating a fire stick. In no time, the fire rose and the water in the pot quickly boiled. The boy brought several steamers and placed the various colored pastries that had been prepared. 15 minutes later, the aroma emanated, causing Tao Yuer's fingers to twitch. She tossed and turned all night, already starving to the point where her chest pressed against her back. Now that she could smell the fragrance, she wished she could eat all the steamers in front of her. The boy took a large bowl from the side and scooped up the miscellaneous vegetables and lean meat congee from the other pot. There are carrots cut into plum blossom petals, cucumbers shaped like 5-pointed stars, and a few diamond-shaped ginger slices in congee, mixed with shredded meat and scallions, giving off an inexpressible fragrance. Tao Yuer looked eagerly at the young man and swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva, saying, "Can I?" "No," the boy interrupted her without looking at her. He was busy working in front of the stove until Tao Yuer's saliva dripped onto his shoes. He frowned contemptuously and took a step aside, saying calmly, "This is for people to eat. Don't waste food." Tao Yuer was very anxious and said, "I'm also human." "You're not." The young man shook his head and said, "You are a dying person." Tao Yuer's throat tightened, realizing that she couldn't refute it. She turned pale and pondered for a long time before saying, "Then, for the sake of me dying soon, let me be a starving ghost, okay?" "No." The young man's words were concise and clear, with an unquestionable tone of certainty. As he spoke, he took out the pastries from the steamer one by one. Tao Yuer can only watch those 2-color lotus rolls, rose-steamed dumplings, purple sweet potato brown sugar cakes, and 3-color blooming mantu being squeezed out one by one, and the whole plate is filled with colorful flowers. Then he took vegetable congee in one hand and cake plate in the other, and walked out without looking back. "When will you take me to die? Living is really too hard." Tao Yuer covered her stomach and shouted, saliva flowing all over her body in an instant. The young man seemed to have not heard her and did not pay attention to her. He went to the courtyard, put the congee basin and pastry plate in the middle of the table, and then took out a stack of iron rice bowls from the tree hole and lined them up next to the table, about 20 of them. Ding shui. The young man held a copper bell, and as soon as the bell rang, there were strange noises in the surrounding houses, and gradually there were voices. Quickly, several children rushed out of the room, big and small, about 10 people. The eldest is at most 10 years old, while the youngest is only 5 or 6 years old. They all look like they haven't woken up yet. They were dressed in tattered clothes, with thin and weak figures, and had large and small ulcers on their exposed skin in the air. After grooming, "Come and have breakfast," the young man said lightly and began to distribute pastries in everyone's bowls. "Yes. Brother Hualing." The children answered in unison, then ran towards the backyard in unison. There is a well of water there for grooming. Originally, his name was Hualing. He is truly a person as his name suggests. Under the sunshine, he stood alone by the wooden table, surrounded by the lush greenery and lush flowers and trees behind him, like an elf among the flowers. Beautiful beyond ordinary people. And what he is doing doesn't seem like something that an ordinary person would do. Tao Yuer was surprised to find that the children running around in the yard were all people with illnesses and could not live long. At this moment, looking at Hualing next to the table, I understood the meaning of his sentence: those who come in will never be able to go out alive again. The epidemic can spread, and I'm afraid she will also be unlucky. But she is not afraid. What about Hualing? Is he not afraid either? Why? 10,000 doubts rose in Tao Yuer's heart, but Hualing's attitude towards her was very cold. Even if she asked, he wouldn't answer. The children finished washing up and sat down in their seats, but not one by one, but scattered. Tao Yuer noticed that not everyone had food in the bowl on the table, 2/3 of which were empty, and no one was sitting on the corresponding chair. "Brother Hualing, today's breakfast is so delicious." Ping. Hualing's eyes widened and she said coldly, "You don't eat, you don't sleep, you forget what I said." "Oh." The child was stared at by him, and immediately closed his mouth, buried his head in the bowl, and drank congee with an expression of concentration. Tao Yuer's heart relaxed and realized that he was not only indifferent to her, but also had the same tone towards the child. "I'm afraid it's a naturally cold temperament." Thinking of this, Tao Yuer felt a little happy. Hualing went to the only child in the crowd who didn't eat and sat down, then took up the bowl, took the spoon, and fed the congee into the child's mouth one mouthful at a time. The gentle breeze blew over the child's sleeve, and Tao Yuer only realized that his sleeve was empty. This child, he had no hands. Hualing patiently fed the whole bowl of congee and asked him, "Are you still eating?" The child shook his head and said, "Thank you, Brother Hualing. I'm full now." Hualing took out a handkerchief and wiped the child's mouth. His movements were slow and gentle, which was extremely inconsistent with his indifferent face. The sunlight shone through the shade of the trees, and several shadows fell around Hualing, softening his cold and lonely temperament and adding a touch of divinity. Tao Yuer's heart is full of mixed flavors. Watching such a jade-faced young man carefully take care of a group of children with illnesses, my heart was greatly impacted. What were you doing when you were 17 years old? Blind date, or blind date. Year after year, it seems like we are always waiting for a man holding a willow branch to descend from the sky and take her out of the slum. Present her with a phoenix crown and a rosy robe, for a lifetime of peace and stability. But she couldn't wait at all. Just waiting for year after year of disappointment, and year after year of aging. Compared to Hualing, her life is truly monotonous and meaningless. Tao Yuer was even more eager to die. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Little Black House. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Little Black House. After feeding the child congee, Hualing looked around and found that no one had touched the food in the dishes at the end of the table, and the child who should have sat there had not appeared. "Where is Ian?" Hualing asked. "Ian played around for half a night last night, and I'm afraid she hasn't woken up yet," one of the children replied, and Hualing's face immediately became a little colder. Hualing said in a deep voice, "Go tell her, if she doesn't appear again, then lock her up in the black room." As soon as the children heard the word "black house," they immediately showed a look of panic and fear, as if they had heard the most terrifying thing in the world. Even the nearby room was filled with a rustling sound. Soon, a child with loose hair ran out in a hurry. She was carrying a wide waistband with both hands, not even putting on her shoes. Ayan had actually woken up, but it was cold outside the bed and she didn't want to get up. When she heard Hualing mention the black room, she quickly struggled to get up and sat down at the table in a hurry. Although she was wearing worn-out and ill-fitting men's clothing, it was evident that she was a girl. Brother Hualing, I just had a headache. So. I didn't wake up. You must not lock me up in the dark room. The girl named Ayan appeared particularly nervous. Hualing glanced at her and said in a deep voice, "Eat." Yes. Ayan quickly nodded, only then did she notice the food in the bowl. Her eyes suddenly lit up with a strange light, and she didn't even care about using a spoon. She picked up the bowl and gave it to her mouth. Tao Yuer stood not far away, watching them put cakes into her mouth one by one, divide up congee, swallow some saliva, and then starvation appeared before her eyes. She suddenly felt that she might have starved to death in this lifetime. That's too tragic. Tao Yuer's stomach growled until the children finished breakfast. They each went to the well with iron wrists to wash, while Hualing picked up the excess empty dishes on the table, stacked them one by one, and put them back into the tree hole. Tao Yuer saw that he had finished his work and immediately stumbled over, angrily saying, Master Hua, when will you take me to die? Her voice was hoarse, her tone helpless, and her eyes were filled with pleading. Hualing's figure froze and she turned around to look at her. His gaze remained indifferent as ever. No waves, no waves. It was clearly a expressionless face, but to Tao Yuer, a hint of sarcastic sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Hualing remained silent for a moment and said, "Now." Tao Yuer followed Hualing through the front yard and walked to a lonely low house on the westernmost side of the backyard. The house looked no different from the rest of the houses, all made of piles of earth, with a dilapidated appearance. The doors and window frames of this room were covered in spider webs, as if no one had stepped in for a long time. What's inside? Tao Yuer swept the dust off the door panel, wanting to peek through the crack, but it was pitch black inside and she couldn't see anything. Hualing pushed Tao Yuer forward while taking a step back and said, "Just go in and you'll know." Tao Yuer was not ready and rushed straight to the door, causing dust to accumulate in an instant. She threw herself on a pitch-black wooden board amidst the vast expanse of dust and smoke. "Goodbye, then." Hualing stood outside the door and slowly finished speaking before closing the door. Before the last ray of sunlight was cut off, Tao Yuer saw through the light that the wooden board in front of her was actually the cover plate of the coffin. Tao Yuer suddenly jumped up and stood there, unable to come to her senses for a long time. Hualing, so fast that even the coffin has been prepared for her. He's also quite thoughtful, isn't he? Tao Yuer was unsure whether to be grateful or moved, but soon rejected the idea. This small house has 2 rooms, but no windows. Tao Yuer's surroundings were pitch black, and she couldn't see her fingers when she reached out. She touched around the coffin and realized that it was not like an adult's body in length and width, and should have been customized for the children in this courtyard. Tao Yuer's mind was initially calm. She really wanted to open the coffin and take a look, but she was afraid that someone inside might offend her. She could only sit down against the coffin, look around, suddenly feeling a bit confused. What did Hualing ask herself to do in this room? Is there anything deadly inside this? No, is he trying to starve her to death? Or scare her to death? She is timid, but she is not even afraid of death. Will she still be afraid of ghosts and the dark? Just as Tao Yuer was suspected of having a cluster of sinuses, a gust of wind blew by, and suddenly an almost imperceptible sigh came from the room inside. Tao Yuer's whole body was in a state of excitement. Looking in the direction of the sound, she saw a passage standing between the inside and outside, and suddenly an oil lamp appeared. The faint light of the fire was almost negligible, and could only illuminate a foot-wide area in front of it. It's no wonder Tao Yuer didn't notice at first. Who's inside? Tao Yuer asked, but no one answered her for a long time. She felt curious and got up to walk towards the candlelight. Tao Yuer cautiously groped her way forward, and as she approached the oil lamp, she even slowed down her pace, but her clothes still carried a gentle breeze. The gentle breeze brushed by, and the oil lamp flickered several times, with an indelible appearance. Tao Yuer's heart suddenly tightened, praying that it must not be destroyed. Fortunately, the candle did not go out in the end. It struggled and jumped a few times before continuing to burn lifelessly. Tao Yuer bent down to hold the candlestick and walked slowly towards the inside. Through a half-meter-long corridor, I arrived at the inner room and realized that it may not be a residential area. Tao Yuer took 2 more steps forward, and a strong musty smell came in. Immediately after, her knee collided with an object. Tao Yuer lowered the candlestick and saw a pale face suddenly appear in front of her. Ah! Tao Yuer screamed, almost throwing the candlestick out in fear. That face doesn't look like a living person, with a grayish-black aura covering his entire body, as if he has been out of breath for many days. Tao Yuer's legs became weak, she propped up her mind and settled down. She lowered the candlestick again, mentally prepared this time, thinking it would be much better, but seeing this face again still felt terrifying. It was the face of a girl about 8 years old. Her hair was sticking strand by strand to her scalp, her eyes were wide open, her cheeks were sunken, her lips were half open, and there were large green spots floating on her face. Above the green patches, there are also small black bumps, some of which are thick, some are cracked, some have white hair. In short, they look like a late-stage epidemic. If it weren't for Tao Yuer hearing her sigh before, she would have thought she wouldn't have died in peace. "Why are you locked up here alone?" Tao Yuer asked her softly. The girl didn't even move, so naturally she didn't answer him. Tao Yuer thought she was seriously ill and unable to speak, so she didn't continue asking. Tao Yuer picked up the candlestick and circled around the small room. The room was small and narrow, and could only accommodate a small bed, surrounded by walls. In no time, she had already finished visiting. "Hey!" Another almost imperceptible sigh came, and Tao Yuer lowered her head and focused her attention on the girl. She moved the candlestick to her left hand and leaned down with her right hand, wanting to hold the girl's hand. But she groped around in bed for a long time without touching the girl's hand. Tao Yuer lowered the candlestick, illuminating a corner of the floral bedding. When she opened it, she found that the girl's limbs had shrunk due to long-term bed rest. What a pitiful child, no wonder Hualing placed her here alone. Tao Yuer sighed as she put down the bedding and sat down beside the bed, her head directly facing the girl's chest. Candlelight jumps on the left side, always bringing only a glimmer of light. Although it is a fiery red color, it is surrounded by the darkness surrounding it, and is about to be extinguished anytime and anywhere. "I'm here to be with you, and on the way to the underworld, we won't be lonely anymore." "How old are you? How long have you been here? Do they usually ignore you? Are you curious?" "I'm in good health with well-developed limbs, why did I die here?" "Actually, I don't necessarily have to die. It's just that living is empty and meaningless to me. No one needs me. No one loves me. I don't love anyone either. So why am I living so hard?" End of this chapter. Chapter 6. She seems to be not breathing, right? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. She seems to be not breathing, right? From beginning to end, it was Tao Yuer talking to herself alone, and the girl never answered him a word. Tao Yuer turned her face and rested her chin on the bedding in front of the girl's chest. She forced a smile and asked, "Can't you speak? Are you still weak?" Under the dim yellow candlelight, Tao Yuer could only see her face below her lips. Her chin was mottled and terrifying, but Tao Yuer didn't mind her dirt at all. Instead, she lifted the scattered hair on her face and put it back on the pillow. Tao Yuer stared at her mouth for a long time before suddenly feeling a chill in her heart. She kept her mouth half open without moving a single bit. She doesn't seem to be breathing, does she? Tao Yuer trembled and reached out her hand, probing under her nose. 1, 2, 3. She really didn't breathe. In surprise, Tao Yuer accidentally touched her skin and felt a chill and bone-cutting sensation. That was definitely not the same temperature as a living person. Tao Yuer crawled back down the aisle, breathing heavily as if she had seen something amazing. But when she calmed down, on second thought, she realized that she had really been a little alarmed. Since she was here to seek death, what kind of dead person was she afraid of? She is afraid that she has only been dead for a few days, so she has not been buried yet. If the sores on her body are still there, she is very likely to be infected. If she suffers from the epidemic, she will soon be able to pass away, just like her. Tao Yuer thought of this and wanted to turn back, but her feet were filled with lead and she couldn't move at all. If she really died? How do you explain the sigh just now? Just as Tao Yuer was lost in thought, a sound of the bedding being lifted suddenly echoed behind her. Immediately after, another dull voice sounded, like the sound of a corpse falling from the bed and smashing to the ground. Tao Yuer held an oil lamp and turned around to see a pale arm landing on the ground, trembling slightly. Its 5 fingers were tightly clenched on the ground, and its brown nail covers flipped over at an incredible angle. If an ordinary person were like this, they would have already fainted from the pain, but they were completely unaware and continued to move forward bit by bit. Help, 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 help. Help. Tao Yuer's pupils suddenly tightened and she let out a pig-like cry in her throat. But then, her voice seemed to be taken away by someone, choking in her throat and unable to utter a single word. Tao Yuer was shocked and pale. She crawled towards the door on all fours, but soon she collided with an object and seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. She was imprisoned next to the coffin, with the front door right in front of her, and a glimmer of light shining through the crack. She could even see Hualing's receding figure through the crack. But she will never touch the door or shout out loud. Dong! 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 She clenched her fists and pounded the floor desperately, trying to catch Hualing's attention. However, Hualing was completely unaware and kept walking, as if she hadn't heard her at all. At this moment, she suddenly felt a chill coming from her legs and ankles. She dared not turn back to look at her feet, but her head seemed uncontrollable and was forcefully snapped back by an unknown force. Tao Yuer suddenly shook and knocked over the oil lamp. The oil lamp overturned, and the lamp oil scattered all over the ground, but the wick still lit up a flame. A pale face mixed with dim yellow flames caught the eye, and the dead body on the bed had already crawled between its legs at some point. Her eyes were bloodshot, her mouth was cracked and white, her face was covered in bruises and scars, and the pus and blood on her face flowed down. It was clearly a lifeless face, clearly a thoroughly dead person, but now it crawled onto itself, with its 2 gray-white claws tightly gripping its legs. She crawled forward, her head pressed against Tao Yuer's lower abdomen. Immediately afterwards, most of her body was bullied on her. Go away. No, don't touch me. Tao Yuer didn't know where her strength came from and kicked her feet hard. But no matter how hard her legs tried, she couldn't break free from her shackles. Her eyes widened wider and wider, her smile at the corner of her mouth became more ferocious, and her body still had the intention of continuing to crawl forward. Help, help. Let me out. Tao Yuer waved her hands and, in a moment of panic, pulled off her bundles of hair. A sticky feeling came from her hands, and when she realized she was holding her hair, her whole body trembled again. At this moment, looking at it again, only a few scattered strands of hair were hanging on top of her head, and dark red blood pits covered her scalp. Terrifying and disgusting. Tao Yuer suddenly threw her hair out, but unfortunately she couldn't shake it off no matter how hard she tried. And she also seemed to be provoked. In the blink of an eye, her body, which was originally crawling slowly, suddenly stood upright and rushed towards Tao Yuer. With a loud click sound, Tao Yuer let out a muffled groan, as if she had been hit by 1,000 pounds of weight on the ground, and several bones in her chest were broken. Tao Yuer's throat was fishy, and a large mouthful of blood spurted out. Her face was covered in blood stains, and even her round eyes were red with blood. Let go. 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 Soon, Tao Yuer couldn't say anything more. The front was scared by her, while the back was choked by her throat. Tao Yuer vigorously patted her wrist, which was gripping her throat, but her hand felt like it had touched a cold iron pillar that was impervious to knives and bullets. Her beating was like tickling through her boots and had no effect. The familiar suffocation soon arrived, and Tao Yuer's cheeks turned red, her eyes protruded, her hands drooped weakly, and she was about to breathe out. At this moment, her fingertips touched the candlestick, and she didn't know where the strength came from. Suddenly, she grabbed the candlestick vigorously and threw it fiercely at her head. After a muffled bang, her head drooped at an incredible angle around her neck, resembling a fractured spine. Tao Yuer felt a sudden release of pressure on her neck. Taking advantage of her stunned state, she lifted her right leg, kicked her out, and ran towards the gate. However, as the gate was in front of her, she could not touch it. The invisible wall was like a mountain valley that could not be crossed. A sinister smile and a rapid climbing sound echoed from behind, and it reacted and rushed towards Tao Yuer again. Tao Yuer was so scared that she retreated to her side, but because she couldn't see the wall beside her, she slammed her head against the wall with a thud, causing warm liquid to flow down. In an instant, her head was shattered and bleeding. At the same time, her ankle was grabbed by someone, emitting a bone-chilling sensation. Tao Yuer slowly closed her eyes, letting the blood on her forehead drip down her chin. Just as she thought she was dead, a scream of panic and a sizzling sound came from beneath her. Soon, her hand withdrew like an electric shock. Tao Yuer suddenly looked up and saw herself still sitting by the bed. The candle in her hand was not yet extinguished, and the child on the bed was still sleeping peacefully. Everything she had just experienced was like a dream, leaving no trace. Did you just dream? What a terrible dream! Tao Yuer felt lingering palpitations and was sweating profusely. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Ghosts. For a long time, Tao Yuer trembled as she held the candlestick and looked at the girl from head to toe, only to find that she was indeed just a dead corpse. She didn't wake up, didn't breathe, didn't sigh, let alone spread her teeth and claws towards her. Tao Yuer breathed a sigh of relief. She is actually not afraid of corpses. She grew up in a slum and often had neighbors who starved to death. She threw a roll of straw mat at a mass grave. She can often see the 2 feet sticking out of the straw mat, with dark blue skin, which is exactly the same as the little girl of this son. Having seen it many times, I have become accustomed to it. But she shouldn't have died for long. At this moment, Tao Yuer noticed a small detail. On her right hand, there was a black scorched pit, which was different from the black spots left by the epidemic on her body, as if it had been burnt by something. She reached out to touch and found that fine black residue could still be crushed out of the black pit, as if it had just been burned. Tao Yuer's heart was tense. Although she knew it was just a dream she had developed out of fear, she still felt a sense of unease. She quickly stood up and dragged her tired body towards the outside. A glimmer of light seeped through the crack of the door, and Tao Yuer placed her hand on the door. The latch was not locked, as if it could be easily opened with a gentle pull. The sunlight seeped in, and the outside world was bright and beautiful, while I was inside the house, scared to the bone by a dead child. She thought, perhaps deep down in her heart, she actually didn't want to die. However, she lived aimlessly and alone, seemingly unsure of what she could do. Hey. Just then, a familiar sigh came from behind her, and this time, the sigh seemed to be right in her ear. Tao Yuer was suddenly startled and jumped out of the door like a startled rabbit. Outside, the dazzling sunlight was so bright that she couldn't open her eyes. Help, help. There are ghosts. In the world outside, Hualing was washing clothes by the well with her back to Tao Yuer. He turned around at the sound and saw Tao Yuer rushing towards him with lightning speed. Tao Yuer bumped into a soft chest. With a faint aroma of grass, it lingers in the nose and cannot be shaken away. Tao Yuer regained her composure and looked up to see Hualing's cold and beautiful eyebrows and eyes, as if they were moonlight, staring at her. At that moment, Tao Yuer's heart skipped a beat. It was unclear whether it was the warm sunshine of spring, or the fragrance of Hualing's body and his gentle and jade-like eyebrows and eyes, which made her suddenly feel that the world was truly beautiful. She suddenly didn't want to die. Finally out. I thought I was dead. Tao Yuer felt lingering fear and clenched Hualing's collar. Hualing was being carried by her, always uncomfortable, but she didn't push her away, letting her cling to her chest. You just want to die, Hualing said lightly. Why are you afraid of death again now? Upon hearing this, Tao Yuer suddenly stopped crying. She remembered her first encounter with Hualing, which was a determination she had never had before in her life. She has been at the mercy of others throughout her life, and the only thing she has made up her mind to do is to die. She has never been so cruel to others before, and it is not an exaggeration to describe her as having a cold expression. But now, she says she regrets it. Isn't she not even able to do a resolute thing? She doesn't want to be laughed at anymore. Tao Yuer stood up straight from Hualing's shoulder, looking at her indifferent expression as she was close by. She wiped her nose in a daze and said, I want to die, but I don't want to die like this. Tao Yuer's mouth was stiff, hoping to regain some dignity. But Hualing not only didn't appreciate her, but also detested her even more. The playfulness in Hualing's eyes faded, and his face darkened. He pushed Tao Yuer away and continued washing clothes. So cold that I didn't even want to give her a glance. Tao Yuer fell and sat by the well, stunned for a while, but didn't dare to disturb Hualing anymore. She sat by the well, letting the scorching sun shine on her whole body, breathing in the air of the world. After a while, she always felt her face sticky and wanted to wash it. She turned around and lay down by the well, about to grab a handful of water, but suddenly her whole body stiffened and she remained there for a long time without speaking. Don't block me from washing clothes, Hualing said lightly. Tao Yuer, however, seemed to have not heard her and murmured, Is this really, really? Hualing couldn't understand what she was saying, and her face was full of impatience. She was about to push Tao Yuer away, but at the moment she touched her body, she tightly grasped her right hand. Tao Yuer grabbed Hualing's palm with both hands, and the warmth from her palms suddenly made her feel a little relieved. But the whole person was still trembling uncontrollably. She exclaimed in shock, I think I've seen a ghost. Hualing, there are no ghosts in this world. Tao Yuer. I really saw it. Hualing ignored his fear and said again, there are no ghosts in this world. So, what is this? Tao Yuer pointed to the bloodstains left from hitting the wall on her head and said, I dreamt that a ghost grabbed my head and hit it against the wall. My head was bleeding and I almost died. When I woke up, it seemed like nothing had happened. At first, I was dreaming for myself, but this is evidence. This injury wouldn't have been caused by me hitting the wall myself. Hualing didn't speak, but there was a clear doubt in her eyes. Tao Yuer was about to speak when she saw a white shadow flashing past the door of the black room. Although it was brief, Tao Yuer recognized her as a corpse lying inside. She was just a child at her waist, but the ferocity in her eyes made him shudder. Tao Yuer suddenly opened her eyes wide and pointed behind Hualing, saying, "Here we go again. She's here again." "Who's here?" She, he. "She's behind you." As Hualing turned around, the child turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared, leaving only the wooden door creaking. Tao Yuer was even more frightened and said urgently, "There are really ghosts." Hualing looked at the wooden door swayed by the wind, shook her head, and said calmly, "That's not a ghost. That's a demon. Demon. Heart demon. Heart demon." Tao Yuer was puzzled. Hualing nodded and said, "These are just some of Ashing's lingering obsession in the world. Everyone will have it to some extent, but she is particularly strong." "Did you see her?" Tao Yuer was puzzled. When he turned around, the little girl was already gone. How did he know what he was saying? Hualing replied calmly, "I have seen it. Not just one, but many. This is too scary." Tao Yuer was shocked. "Heart demons are not scary," Hualing paused and continued, "the truly scary thing is not here. She is already dead, isn't she?" Tao Yuer asked again. Hualing nodded. "How long have you been dead?" Hualing raised 4 fingers. Tao Yuer frowned and said, 4 days. Hualing shook her head and said, 4 months. "It's been 4 months. Tao Yuer was shocked. "The body hasn't decayed for 4 months. Why didn't you bury her?" Hualing said, "You cannot bury the demon in your heart until it is removed." "Why?" "Because among the 4 provinces, Qingkangzhou and Jizhou are the most polluted. Every time people develop a demon, over time, a new demon clan will emerge in the wilderness. The demon clan broke free from its seal, frequently encountered floods, and managed to cross the Yangtze to bring disaster to the world, causing frequent wars. Hualing knows these reasons, but Tao Yuer may not understand. If her inner demons can be eliminated in the world, then there will be 1 less demon in the wilderness." Hualing spoke lightly, without explaining very specifically. "Because Tao Yuer's life has become a problem even in terms of food and clothing. Even if she can't get married, she can be forced to death. How could she understand the great ways of the world and the ever-changing vicissitudes? It's not easy for her to live well." Tao Yuer was taken aback for a moment, and indeed did not anticipate any further reason. She had listened to many storytellers and local customs in her spare time, but she had never heard of such subtle principles. Surprised, Tao Yuer couldn't help but wonder, "How did you know all this?" "Everyone knows, don't you know?" Upon hearing this, Hualing's surprise was no less than that of Tao Yuer. "Do I need to know?" Tao Yuer was puzzled. "Have you never seen Jufanglio in Jingcheng?" Hualing said calmly, "No matter what the war may be, there is an organization that always takes precedence over national enmity among the 9 countries. The 9 countries have set up Jufanglio together, which is used to gather extraordinary people and scholars from the people to resist the demonic tribes in the wilderness. Jufanglio actually does this. I thought they were just like Jufanghai, selling mooncakes." Hualing was speechless, looking at her like she was looking at a mentally disabled person. Tao Yuer said again, "Are you planning to leave her like this?" Hualing shook her head and said, "It's almost there." Tao Yuer. "What's so fast?" Hualing, "The time to eliminate her inner demons is approaching." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Nice to meet you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Nice to meet you. After Hualing finished speaking, she continued to clean her clothes. His fingers are thin and slender, fair and clean, but when he works, he looks decent and has no sense of unfamiliarity, indicating that he often does this. He was surrounded by the children's tattered and dirty clothes, piled up so high on a small hill, but he had no patience at all. Tao Yuer understands that Hualing is a person who is cold on the outside and hot on the inside, as evidenced by his careful cooking and feeding of children. Tao Yuer sat aside, with nothing to do but stare at him. She found that his profile looked more and more beautiful. Generally, after looking for a long time, the stunning appearance may become eye-catching and gradually develop a feeling of boredom, but Hualing doesn't. He belongs to the type of person who enjoys it at first sight but also feels excited after seeing it for a long time. The fair skin is completely different from the child who has been diagnosed with diseases in this hospital. He doesn't seem like a person with an infectious disease, so why did he stay here? Tao Yuer was about to ask him, but was preempted by Hualing and asked in reverse, "What are you still doing here?" Hualing stopped her movements and turned to look at her. Tao Yuer was stunned. Hualing raised her chin in the direction of the gate and said, "If you don't want to die, leave here. If you want to die, go back to the dark room and wait for death. Don't stay here and delay my work." Tao Yuer was startled by the coldness in his eyes, afraid that he would really let herself return to that room, so she quickly wiped her face and ran towards the front yard. But halfway through, she suddenly stopped and turned back. Hualing looked up and looked at her with confusion and impatience. "Why did you come back again?" Tao Yuer hesitated for a moment before saying, "Well, although I haven't died yet and I'm almost dead, I'm still very happy to meet you before I die." Hualing's face was blank and she didn't answer. But looking at them, it seems that they are not very happy either. He doesn't seem happy to meet her at all. Under immense pressure, Tao Yuer said again, "I'm a clumsy person who doesn't know how to speak. Don't be angry. Although I may not live long, I still want to know which spirit you are, with your surname Hua and name Ling. Is it a spirit of spiritual energy or something else? I have no other intention, I just want to establish a plaque for you. In this life, besides my grandparents, you have been the best to me." Hualing is even more speechless. How did he ever treat her well? Could it be that stopping her from dying once, giving her a hand, and pulling her up from the mud is treating her well? Then she's too easy to pass on. Tao Yuer scratched her head and said awkwardly, "From childhood to adulthood, others have not even wanted to talk to me. They all think I am unlucky and say that I will damage their luck. If you are willing to bring me back and let me have a piece of tile to rest on, it is already a great kindness." This woman looks quite old, but she really hasn't received any love. The actor's performance. For the first time, Hualing, who never wanted to talk much to others, answered her question. He doesn't even want to talk to many living people, let alone she is still a dying person. Hualing showed a hint of kindness, and Tao Yuer seemed to open her mouth and asked one after another, "Where is this? Why do these children get sick?" Hualing remained silent for a moment. She didn't want to talk to her, but seeing her eyes full of hope and curiosity, and feeling a bit impatient, she slowly said, "This is an epidemic center under the Tsiyu Bureau. Children who have contracted diseases in the Tsiyu Bureau will be locked up here and wait to die. So, what about you? You're clean, refined, and don't look ordinary. You don't look like an orphan, but rather like a noble young master raised by a wealthy family. Why are you here helping orphans with laundry and cooking?" Tao Yuer never stops, and Hualing has completely lost her good face. He gave her a cold glance and said, "I have no obligation to tell you these things." He then averted his gaze and focused on the work at hand. The complete disgust and contempt made Tao Yuer aware clearly that if she stayed any longer, she might be locked up in a small black room by him, so she had to quickly slip away. Tao Yuer returned to the courtyard, and the gate was only a few feet away from her. As she watched it get closer, she unconsciously slowed down her pace. The children were chasing and playing under the tree, and apart from having ulcers on their bodies, they were no different from the children outside. Their smiles were even purer than many adults outside, without any worldly troubles. They were even happier than when she was a child. What was her childhood like? Although she lives in a slum, as long as there is a deep crowd, there will be comparison and loss, and there are also different levels of people in the slum. And their family is the lowest class. She is always looked down upon by people. And here, they are all the same. They are all children without fathers or mothers, all suffering from epidemics and will soon pass away. They are the group that will never be bullied. Because life can no longer be worse. But they also don't realize their own tragedy. They only know that they have food to eat, clothes to wear, can see the sunlight, smell the fragrance of flowers, and can live day by day. Without expectations and stubbornness for the future, the present day becomes lively and joyful. Tao Yuer's lips unconsciously raised a hint of a smile. She actually doesn't want to leave here, but she hasn't realized it yet. Hey! Another sigh sounded behind her, and Tao Yuer turned around like a ghost, only to realize that this sigh came from the little girl behind her. At the long table under the tree, a little girl was wiping dishes, and Tao Yuer recognized her as the last child named Ian to come out of the room. What are you doing? Tao Yuer walked over and asked her. The little girl lifted her head and glanced at Tao Yuer, her eyes shining with a strange light. She said, I'm cleaning dishes for my friends. Their dishes haven't been washed for a long time. Tao Yuer looked at the bowl in her hand, which was an iron rice bowl, uneven and dilapidated. Obviously, it has been used for a long time. Tao Yuer looked inside the tree hole again, which was naturally carved into a cupboard, with everyone's bowls and chopsticks piled up haphazardly inside. The bowls and chopsticks were wet, as if those children had washed them themselves and put them in with all their hands. Although chaotic, it is also the smoke and fire of the human world. And the bowl next to Ian is for those who have vacant seats. These bowls are unused, why do they still have to be put out? Tao Yuer couldn't understand. In that case, it seems like they have never left. Ian wiped it and raised the bowl in her hand, saying, Look, this is what Ashing uses for eating. When she has a toothache, she likes to bite the edge of the bowl the most. Upon hearing the name Ashing, Tao Yuer's spine suddenly became cold for no reason. Looking at that bowl again, there is indeed a circle of tooth marks on the edge. She suddenly remembered the look on Ah Sheng's face in the dark room, with his teeth open and his hands dancing. If it were a bite on her body, the consequences would be unimaginable. Are you talking about Ah Sheng? The child in the dark room? Tao Yuer asked with uncertainty. Ian nodded vigorously and said, Ashing does indeed live in a dark room. She's already dead. Tao Yuer exclaimed in surprise, these empty seats and utensils won't all be for ghosts, right? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. I want to stay. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. I want to stay, not bad, they're all dead, but so what? Ian raised her head and stared at Tao Yuer with big and innocent eyes, saying naively, Brother Hualing said, as long as they are still in our hearts, they will not die. Tao Yuer was so surprised that she couldn't speak. She couldn't believe that Hualing, who was indifferent and indifferent to others, would say these words. Brother Hualing is not lying to us. It seemed that Tao Yuer was clearly skeptical, and Ian insisted stubbornly and seriously, each of us will die. I watched them leave us one by one with my own eyes, but we are a family. Death is not separation for us, it is reunion. Each of us is waiting for the time to reunite. So, do you always bring them with you when you eat? Ian nodded and said, in this way, they will always be with us. Is this also what Hualing told you? Tao Yuer was somewhat surprised. Yes. After much thought, Tao Yuer didn't think that Hualing was someone who could say such warm words. But on second thought, I realized that it was also possible. If you deceive children, only children will believe it. Hualing's gentleness towards them is also justifiable. He's just too lazy to be gentle with her. Ian finally wiped a bowl, then suddenly looked up and pondered, but after you came, Brother Ling seems to have changed a person. Has someone changed? Tao Yuer asked again, where has he changed? Without careful consideration, Ian casually replied, Brother Hualing actually cooks for us himself and has made so much delicious food for us. I've been here for over half a year, and I didn't know he could even cook. Tao Yuer was taken aback and said in shock, isn't he the cook here? Ian shook her head and said, he has always been only responsible for eating. Tao Yuer half opened her mouth, even more surprised. She looked at Hualing busy cooking and washing clothes. How could it be that she didn't seem to be the same person as the one in her mouth? If he never cooks, then who does he cook for when he suddenly starts cooking? He didn't give himself any food either. Shouldn't it be made for her to see, right? Tao Yuer hesitated for a long time and said, what do you usually eat? Ian thought for a while, and dragged Tao Yuer back to the kitchen to scoop up a spoonful of rice porridge that was still on the table. She raised the spoon high, and then let it tilt in the air. The porridge took a straight line in the air and fell back into the bowl, splashing a little water stains. She nuzzled her mouth and said, here, let's eat this. Whoever has time, whoever cooks a big pot, and that's all the food for the whole day. No carrots, no cucumbers, no scallions, let alone minced pork stars. Amidst Tao Yuer's astonishment, Ian patted her shoulder and said, to Brother Ling, you are different from us. The burden of saving Brother Ling falls on you, come on. Rescue. Tao Yuer frowned again and asked, does he need someone else to save him? He has hands and feet, is physically healthy, and has a bright heart, with no signs of needing anyone else's help. Ian nodded vigorously and said, Brother Ling is the most seriously mentally ill among all of us. Don't be fooled by his appearance, he is actually more sensitive than anyone else. All the anger is accumulated in his heart. If this continues, it will eventually explode. Tao Yuer half opened her mouth and exclaimed in shock, where did you start saying this? Ian's expression was filled with a solemnity that she wouldn't have at her age, as if she had an incredible secret. She pulled Tao Yuer to sit on the kitchen threshold and looked around to make sure no one was approaching before she said softly, I'm only saying this to you. You must not spread it. Tao Yuer nodded forcefully and said, I won't say anything. The thing is like this. Ian's thoughts were ethereal, and she told a painful story of the listener shedding tears and the listener feeling sad. Hualing grew up in a family of officials from a young age, and her father was a local governor with considerable power. Unfortunately, after the change of emperor, Hua Fu was exiled to Lingnan due to a mistake in his factional stance, and the family went their separate ways. And his mother, due to her beautiful appearance, was taken possession of by the new governor. Later, due to unbearable humiliation, she threw herself into the river shortly after. Hualing also became an official slave and was sent to the theater, babbling all day long to please those in power. His original name has also been erased, with only a single name of actor, meaning actor. And he originally had an unmarried wife, but due to the decline of his family, he severed ties with him and became betrothed to the son of the new governor. On the day of the grand wedding, the prefect's mansion carried 2 large red sedan chairs into the door. One crown is the daughter of Mr. Lu's family, while the other crown is adorned with a plethora of flowers. That's right, the son of the new governor not only fell in love with Hualing's wife, but also with her. From then on, he married a man with his fiancée A.E. and lived a more gloomy life, which could be said to be one of survival and death. But even so, he never thought of committing suicide. He swore to wait until his father returned to reunite with his son. Later, Hualing was hypocritical and finally gained the trust of the prefect's family, and then managed to escape on a dark and stormy night. Because no one dared to come to the epidemic center of the kindergarten bureau, he hid here and stayed for most of the year. No wonder. Tao Yuer murmured to herself after listening, unable to regain her senses for a while. No wonder what? Ayin said strangely. No wonder Hualing hates me so much. Because he cannot see others commit suicide. His life has been scattered from the clouds and dust, and he never thought of giving up. However, apart from being hurt in her heart, she actually didn't eat any words, but threatened to never live again. No wonder he is so indifferent to himself. Tao Yuer looked at the child in the yard who had contracted an epidemic but still refused to give up her life. Suddenly, she remembered the sentence he had said when she first met Hualing. The today you easily gave up on is the tomorrow that the deceased dreamed of. Life comes and goes, and every day is an irreplaceable life. Do you really plan to give up on this? He actually wants to advise himself not to commit suicide. Tao Yuer finally understood why Hualing was so young and always had no smile on her face. Indifference became his synonym, and indifference became his motto. He stands alone, even brighter than the clear light of the moon. There is nothing more fortunate than meeting beauty in the most desperate moments of life. Because I have experienced darkness, I yearn for light even more. A person who can face life positively holds hope in their heart, and whether life is difficult, they will not live too badly. Hualing is such a person. In the evening, Tao Yuer found Hualing at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, he came down from the mountain to pick herbs and was preparing to water the taros in the field. I don't want to die anymore. Tao Yuer caught up and grabbed Hualing's sleeve, saying solemnly, I want to stay and take care of the children with you. The evening sunshine shines on the mountain, creating a unique and tranquil beauty. Hualing turned around and gave Tao Yuer a faint glance. Tao Yuer's gaze was firm, with a long-lost light and hope in her eyes. The contempt in Hualing's eyes gradually faded away, and it took her a long time before finally nodding slightly and saying a faint word. Okay. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. This is it. Let's eat first. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. This is it. Let's eat first. Hualing has no unnecessary language skills. Neither warmly welcoming Tao Yuer's arrival nor mocking her previous actions, although always indifferent, this is already a rare goodwill for Tao Yuer. Tao Yuer lifted the dirty hem of her skirt and bowed respectfully and formally, as taught by the matchmaker 10 years ago, saying, Let me formally introduce myself. My surname is Tao, my name is Yuer, and I am 25 years old this year. Thank you very much for saving my life, young Master Hua. I will ask for your guidance in the future. Since Tao Yuer learned that Hualing was the son of the prefect, she called him the young master. Although no one treats him like a young master anymore, at least knowing his past, one cannot ignore it. He was born a young master, so in her heart, she was still willing to call him a young master. In this way, his sense of difference may be smaller upon hearing this. Hualing's face looked a bit strange. Just as she was about to say something, she heard a growl coming from Tao Yuer's stomach. Tao Yuer's face turned red as she hesitated and said, I'm sorry, I'm too hungry. Hualing glanced at her and said nothing, come with me. Tao Yuer followed Hualing back to the courtyard and then went straight to the kitchen. Hualing signaled to Tao Yuer to start a fire, and Tao Yuer immediately squatted on the ground to make trouble. In no time, the water in the pot rolled over. Hualing lifted a piece of white cloth from the cutting board beside her, revealing a large piece of pig leg meat on top. Tao Yuer could not ask where the pork came from, but watched Hualing scoop out the water from the pot, put congee into it, and then put the sliced meat into a piece to cook. In no time, the aroma overflowed. Tao Yuer swallowed several mouthfuls of saliva. She hasn't eaten for 2 or 3 days, let alone meat. She stared straight at Hualing's hand cutting meat and unconsciously shouted, put more meat, put more, put more, put more. Hualing slammed her knife onto the chopping board and said, can I put a pig for you? Tao Yuer was startled and realized that she had lost her composure again. She pursed her lips, lowered her head in panic, and waved her hand. No, no need. Enough, enough. Although Hualing's face was not harmonious, she still cut a few more pieces of meat for her. It was full, not like cooking congee, but like stewing meat. Then he took out 3 pre-made dough from the side. The dough appears white, purple, and orange. Tao Yuer asked him in surprise, why do these dough turn purple and orange? Because purple potatoes and pumpkins were added inside. Hualing finished speaking and rolled the white dough and purple potato dough into round pieces, the pumpkin dough into round balls, the white dough skin at the bottom, the purple potato dough skin in the middle, and the pumpkin ball at the top. Wrap the pumpkin ball like a bun and hold it tightly facing down. Use a knife to make a cross cut on top and put it into a steamer. Half a quarter of an hour later, these dough pieces were cooked and each one was laughing. What is this? 3-color blooming mantu. This is amazing. Tao Yuer couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Hualing took out one and handed it to her. Try it. Tao Yuer was already so hungry that her chest pressed against her back. She immediately took one and put it in her mouth, which was so hot that she couldn't stop jumping and praising, "It's so delicious." "Do you like it?" "I like it." "Do you want to learn?" "Think." Hualing seemed to anticipate that she wanted to learn how to cook. She took out a book from her arms and handed it to Tao Yuer, saying, "From now on, you can follow this recipe." "Okay." Tao Yuer took the recipe and saw that it was different from the batch-printed recipes sold on the market. On the cover, there are 5 big characters written in Qingjing drinking and dietary record. The handwriting is strong and thin, agile and elegant, and very neat. But unfortunately, Tao Yuer cannot read and understand. She also cannot judge whether her writing is good or not. She was about to say that she couldn't read, but she found the book open and the content inside was breathtaking. There are all paintings inside. Every dish and every step has a detailed composition. Even if you are not literate, you can fully understand it. Tao Yuer suddenly felt like crying. Her most cherished possession is a book. Unfortunately, she couldn't understand the words in the book at all, so she could only treat it as a psychological support and carry it with her. Even if you commit suicide, you still carry it in your arms. But this book is one that she can fully understand. It is also the book that she instinctively understood in her life. The neatness of the painting in this book is not inferior to that of printed products. Moreover, the pictures are exquisite and the composition is exquisite. Tao Yuer inexplicably believes that the person who drew this book must be a great beauty with a heart of orchids. Because only a kind-hearted beauty can paint such lovely and humorous works. Who wrote this book? Tao Yuer tossed and turned, unable to see the author's seal. She couldn't help but ask, "Could you please give me a signal so that I can have a goal when I read it in the future?" Li Qingzhu. Hualing said slowly, "The name of the person who wrote the book is Li Qingzhu, and the character is Yuehua. Li is the national surname and a prominent family name. The Li family produces talented women, and she is not surprised at all." Tao Yuer nodded and said, "I don't know where this senior is now. Do I have the opportunity to personally visit 1 or 2 in the future?" Hualing tilted her eyes and said calmly, "She has been dead for hundreds of years." Tao Yuer was choked by his words, and it took her a long time to recover. She said in a daze, "It's really a pity that I wasn't born hundreds of years earlier. I believe this person and I must have empathy for each other." Why? Her painting is neat and beautiful, and her skills are skilled, but she doesn't have a single word. She even drew some parts that could be summarized in words. I think she, like me, should also be illiterate. She must also be a woman with a sky in her heart, but she is gloomy and dusty. Unfortunately, even though she is surnamed Li, she probably hasn't received a good education. Her talent has been buried. Upon hearing this, Hualing suddenly widened her eyes and said in a daze, "Have you never heard of the name Yuehua?" "Never heard of it." "Do I need to know?" Tao Yuer blinked and asked him in return. Hualing covered her chest, as if she had been choked by something, and her face turned ugly green. The kitchen was shrouded in smoke, and Tao Yuer thought he was disturbed by the smoke from these firewood fires. She said directly, "Young master, please go out first. I'll leave this to you." Hualing's face was full of annoyance, so she chose not to see anything and nodded before leaving. As she approached, she seemed to remember something and turned to ask her, "Why do you call me young master? You used to be the young master of a prominent family, shouldn't you be called young master? I can't just call you Hualing brother like those children. Besides, it's not appropriate to call you brother because you look younger than me." Upon hearing this, Hualing hesitated slightly and appeared somewhat surprised, saying, "Who told you that?" "Who told me it's not important, what's important is that I feel sorry for you." Tao Yuer withdrew her gaze from Hualing and unconsciously passed through the door, glancing at Ian, who was chatting with other children not far away and was full of joy. Hualing caught a glimpse of her unnatural little movements and said dumbfounded, "Ian's grandfather used to tell a book in a tea-house." She had been exposed to all sorts of strange stories since childhood, and all she could say was a notebook. Only you would believe her here. "Ah. Is what she said fake?" Tao Yuer opened her mouth wide, her expression slightly hurt. "At least, I haven't heard the truth from her mouth yet." Hualing pursed her lips and looked like, "I don't know how to comfort you." She patted her shoulder and turned around and walked out of the kitchen. Tao Yuer stood alone in the distance, neither standing nor sitting. If what Ian said is false, wouldn't she be heartbroken by Hualing? What mindset is she standing here with now? Should she still think of dying? Many contradictions filled her mind, causing her to have a splitting headache. For a long time, she decided not to think about it anymore. The matter has come to an end, let's eat first. End of this chapter.